I'm Julie Ross.
And I'm Gregory Abbey.
And you're listening to the Parenting Horizons podcast.
Julie is a longtime parent educator and counselor.
And Greg is an actor, writer, and director, and more importantly, a parent just like you.
Through conversations covering a range of different topics, challenges, and roadblocks, we hope to give you a few of Julie's tools that might just help make parenting a little bit easier.
Look, nobody's perfect, and parenting is challenging, to say the least. With a few skills under our belts, though, we might just be able to be good enough parents and enjoy the journey and our children a little bit more in the process.
So welcome to the Parenting Horizons podcast. Today we are going to talk about kids, your kids, our kids, and weight issues, food issues. It's a pretty broad topic. And we're lucky enough today to have someone joining us to help us with this discussion. And Julie, if you don't mind just introducing her briefly.
Sure. Well, I'll introduce her in terms of her name, and then she can introduce her credentials. I think that's probably the best way to go. We're very pleased to have Amy Bernstein with us today. And the reason that we asked Amy on the podcast, and then I want you to introduce yourself, but the reason that we asked Amy on the podcast was because I got a question in a group recently that I run about how much, if anything, should you say if you notice that your child has gained or lost weight. So Amy and I got to talking about that, and Amy has a very deep bench with regard to, body image issues and eating and disordered eating and eating disorders and the whole thing. And I thought it would be just great to have her come on. So Amy, if you don't mind introducing yourself.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. So yes, my name is Amy Bernstein. I'm a psychotherapist in private practice in New York City and in Westchester, working remotely during the pandemic. I have a lot of training in body-oriented treatment methods, so I really help people become embodied, inhabit their bodies. I work a lot with trauma survivors. I work with people who are overcoming addiction, eating disorders, helping them really live in their bodies. Yeah, I work with a lot of parents. I work mostly with adults. I do see some adolescents, and I have a child. And this is something that all of us live in our culture, right? Is weight issues, body image issues. It's everywhere. Yeah. It just is sort of part of the fabric of our culture.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm sure we'll touch on this too, but I have a 13-year-old, 16-year-old, and 21-year-old. And the advent of social media, which obviously has been around, which is really kind of upticking, though, especially with TikTok. And I mean, that's always been pervasive, whether it's the magazine covers or the images that are getting projected to children. And maybe I'm off, but it does feel like, wow, more than ever, that's so prevalent now. I mean, maybe because my 8th grader is around more, but I feel like this TikTok thing has become really, really big in terms of that kind of content they're digesting in terms of looks and clothes and all of that stuff. So we can get into that a little bit. Just as an avenue into starting this, Julie and I, we were talking, and can you kind of share what your client maybe was struggling with her own child as a kind of real world example that maybe can lead us into a discussion of some of these issues?
Sure. Well, her daughter recently lost a lot of weight over the summer at camp, and the parents noticed and commented about it, and the daughter said, I feel really good about myself. I like the way I look this way. So the parents, quite rightly, I think, began to wonder if there was, how the weight loss happened. Was it just that she was super physical at camp? Did she not eat? What was really going on there? And one of the things that I'm seeing that also seems to be playing a part in this is that vaping is an appetite suppressant. So there are kids who are having difficulty maintaining a weight, but a lot of them like it. And so, between the fact that vaping is a highly addictive substance itself, and the fact that they're getting kind of positive feedback. And I'm talking about boys and girls alike here. They're getting positive feedback about, hey, you look great, you've lost weight, blah blah blah. I think it's a problem. And as you said, Greg, TikTok and and the social media especially plays into it. I was kind of wondering, though, if Amy could start us off by my daughter has a 2-year-old. So a question that I have is like, and by the way, I think she's doing a terrific job around food and eating, and she's just, I mean, with this kid, and I mean, he's super healthy. But I wonder if there is an attitude that parents can start with regard to how they look at eating, how they look at their child's body type, which may be different from theirs, how they filter the messages that come in from society, in a way to kind of set everything up for success.
Yeah, I love that question. Because if we back way up, right, we're thinking about, when we're talking about body image and we're talking about weight, we're talking about just an aspect of who we are, which is really an image. And if we think about bodies, if we think about the bodies that we live in, the bodies that we inhabit, our bodies are miraculous, right? If you think about what our bodies do, how they self-heal, they create life, right? We can literally grow human beings inside of our bodies. Everything that we experience in our lives, we experience by way of our bodies. And so I always have to wonder why we reduce ourselves to an image that becomes this mark of who we are. Like it sort of represents who we are. And that just fundamentally feels so disrespectful to our bodies, right? And then what's tied to our bodies is, our inner world. It's like our self-regard. And if you think about a 2-year-old, right, Julie, your granddaughter, most 2-year-olds are so fully embodied. It's like they just, when they laugh, 100%. When they cry, it's just this full body experience. You know exactly what they're going through, what they're thinking. And over time, we lose that. We lose connection with our bodies. We become more, it's like we know how people are looking at us. We know how we're seen.
Yeah, you start to put on your own restrictions. I remember in acting school that when we were talking about voice and breath, the teachers would literally say, watch a child, because they don't think about it. They don't have any societal restrictions yet, and their breathing is the most natural of anyone because they don't have that stuff that starts to get put on, whether by themselves or by friends or by society. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah. And if you watch kids eat, they eat so intuitively, They might eat only rice for 4 days and then only vegetables for 3 days. They get what they need intuitively, right? Which is another thing that we lose. And so I always think about, you want to set up this positive self-regard for your whole self, right? And including your bodies. And listening to your bodies. Are you tired? Is it time to go to bed? Have you had enough? Are you hungry? Are you thirsty? Really being able to tune in to yourselves. And a lot of this starts with parents, right? I mean, how many of us have, I don't think you can grow up in this culture and not have biases about weight and about food. There's good foods, bad 100%. Foods, healthy foods, right? And so we all have work to do around this. To the extent is individual. And really, I always suggest to people not talking about weight, not talking about bodies, but rather talking about behaviors, right? If you're concerned about something, you want to look at behaviors.
So what do you mean? So if we take this example of a young woman that's come home from camp and she's lost a lot of weight, and these parents maybe are concerned about the what or the why. How do what would you tell a parent that comes to you and says, hey, I'm really concerned about this? How do you approach a situation by that? And what do you mean when you say, instead of talking about weight, you talk about behaviors?
Right. So I would say, well, how is this child eating? Are they skipping meals? Are they eating in a very methodical way where they're pushing food around their plate, or they're eliminating food groups, or certain types of food, certain colors of food, things that have a certain ingredient? Are they reading nutrition labels? in a way that feels obsessive? Or how does exercise play in? So how are they relating to their eating? What are you seeing
And
in their
that's a
behaviors?
conversation you could have with the child. You mean as opposed to talking about their literal weight and how much they've gained or lost, you either as the therapist or if a parent has come to you, you would ask a parent to, and Julie always talks about tell me more and be curious, that you would explore in a conversation with them about their behaviors around eating if you're concerned. That's what you would say, like, well, hey, what are you eating, or what did you eat at camp? And is that the idea? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, I would actually I would be
Hmm.
curious with the parents before bringing the kid in on it. I would wonder from the parents, what are you seeing? Like what? Okay, so you're concerned about the weight loss. Is there anything else you're concerned about? Are they preoccupied with weight? Are they asking for a scale? Are they weighing themselves every day, multiple times a day? Do you notice that they're going to the bathroom
Mm.
after they eat? Is there food missing? And so that's where I would start is to focus on behaviors rather than, because our weight fluctuates a lot over our lives, especially until we're adults and then into adulthood. Really, our bodies fluctuate, and so sometimes fluctuations are normal, including kids go
Mhm.
through
Mhm.
puberty. It's like they get larger and then they get smaller sometimes. Not everyone, but some of these are normal fluctuations. But when there's concern, I would look at behaviors. And then on the flip side of that, there are people that look completely normal who have very disordered eating, who are like binging and purging. There are people who are overweight who are restricting their food intake. And so weight only tells us so much.
Okay, so, let's say a parent does notice behaviors that are different. The child's going, whatever, the child's going to the bathroom after they eat with regularity. The child is pushing food around the plate. The child's only eating lettuce. How do you feel? What is the best way for the parent to address that with the child?
It's a really good question. I always advise getting support from professionals. Like if you really see a problem, because it's something that is so hard. It's so hard and it's so deep. And with food, it's like it's very complicated. So I always encourage people to finding a therapist who's eating disorder informed. It really is a specialty, and they can help. They can help with the conversations.
The other thing I'm thinking about as I'm listening to you, and I think what makes this so complex as a parent trying to deal with their own child, and you kind of talked about this in the kind of bullet points you sent us. And Julie and I talk about this a lot in all of the episodes, is parents getting clarity around maybe their own issues before talking to their kids and what they're bringing to it. And I'll just speak personally because it made me think of some things as I was reading what you had written about that, like when I was a kid, I think the polite term was husky. And so I wasn't getting stuff from my parents, but I was getting stuff from school a little bit that has affected the way I eat and take care of myself my entire life, right? So like I'm a big runner. I've run a bunch of marathons. I run marathons for a lot of different reasons, but I have joked about like, oh, I run marathons because I'm basically running away from that 12-year-old husky kid. I know that's part of it, and I'm still not totally clear on that. I guess my point is that you have to be really careful about projecting, and let me know if this is making sense. What I say is that I think you have to be very careful about projecting your own sort of eating issues, because as you said, like everyone grapples with this a little bit, and is the reason maybe you go to a specialist like you're saying is that it sounds kind of complicated, and part of why I've stayed away and probably have made slips based on my own biases and my own sort of issues with the eating.
Yeah, and I also think, from a personal perspective, on my part, I was a ballet dancer. I was a professional ballet dancer. So talk about body issues. That is just built
Hmm.
into that profession. Nobody, nobody comes out of that unscathed in terms of body image. And, one of the things that I struggled with, particularly with my daughter as she was growing up, was the fact that her body type was not my body type. And then sadly, I had a pediatrician who basically poured gasoline all over it and lit a match. Because when she was about 3, I guess, or maybe 4, he said, well, she's a little chunky. And that just set everything on fire for me. So it's like, what do I do? What do I do? And he gave very poor advice. He said, well, carrot sticks and celery sticks are, a good food to give to her. So I made the mistake of restricting her food, which led to a huge problem when she was in elementary school. And fortunately, we worked it out. But it's hard not to, if we haven't done our own embodiment work, as you say, Amy, it's hard not to react when somebody touches on a subject that we don't even know we're carrying around this weight, this burden of societal imagery and that kind of thing. So kind of my initial question to you about what can parents do from the get-go in terms of setting the stage in appropriate ways. And maybe what I'm hearing you saying is that the parents, the minute that it becomes apparent that the parent has a problem, that they should be seeking help so that they don't react to their child. Is that kind of part of what you're saying?
I think ideally, yes. Ideally, yes. And I also acknowledge this is really hard work, right? And even when you have done embodiment work, even when you have done your own work around this, it's still there. It's so pervasive. And so it's really hard, sensitive, deep work. And so that's why I always suggest seeking support, because then you'll have somebody to support you in this work. Very practical things that people can do is I would say don't talk about anybody's weight. I mean, one thing that's showing up in the media now are larger bodies in advertisements. Larger bodies, there's more diversity, right?
Yeah.
And I watch how people react to that.
Right.
It's I mean, it can be like a grunt or like a looking away or, right? It's all of that needs to be checked.
Right.
How do you talk about, right? It's this time of year, there's New Year's resolutions. Everybody's talking about, right, sort of undoing what they did over the holidays, or how do you relate to your own body? How do you relate to your own weight? What are you communicating to your kids through that? How are we all right? It's we take a picture of our family. And it all, it has to look Instagram perfect. It's include the pictures where you don't look perfect, where you have a funny facial expression or your hair's all messed up. There's very practical things that we can do.
Yeah, no, I like that a lot. Another thought that just occurred to me is I've certainly had parents who, are pretty thoughtful about, where they've come from in terms of their body images and and their eating and this kind of thing, and have done the work. And then we have society. We have the photoshopped models, we have as Greg mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, we have TikTok, we have Instagram, we have all of the various things where kids are seeing that there are these bodies that are idealized by society. And how does one
combat
that? Yeah,
it's powerful.
As a parent.
Yeah, I think that we balance it out. I think there's so much influence at home, right? So, it can be as simple as sitting on a park bench in Central Park and objectively looking at everybody who walks by, right? So that you get a representation of the real world rather than the imagery that we see in media. Talking about what goes in to those picture perfect images, what happens behind the scenes, and you can on YouTube you can see there's videos of the transformation of somebody from what they look ordinarily to what they look in an image, look like in an image. Having conversations about, no matter what we look like, we deserve love and belonging.
Yeah.
Right? Like every human being is a human being who like feels and loves and contributes and, you know, who is loved and deserves love. Why does, if they look old or they look large or they're too short or why do we size them up so quickly?
I remember years ago, I saw an image on the internet of athletes, everything from a sumo wrestler. So, picture that in your head, all the way to a gymnast, two very different body types, both superior athletes, and everything in between. And I thought, oh, that's kind of good that it's how we use our bodies. It's not what our bodies
Mm,
look like, but the fact that they are healthy,
mm.
athletic miracles. As Amy said, I think it was such a great point at the beginning, that the body is a miraculous piece of work, right? So what it subjectively looks like really shouldn't be of concern, even though it
Well,
is.
I wonder if
Yeah.
I mean, I agree with all that, and I understand the idea of loving yourself as you are. And I think that's and all of this stuff that we talk about it, especially with weight, it's very complex. It seems like there's a lot of different threads to this. But coming off of what Julie just said, I guess my question would be is I understand this idea of helping your child who might be struggling. I love this idea about embodiment and loving yourself for who you are. There's all different body types. But Amy, what if you have a child that says, you know what, that's all true, and I would still like to lose some weight, right? I'd still like to lose some weight. I'll feel better. I would like to lose some weight. I get that, but I'm not comfortable with myself, and I'd like to do that. I guess my question is there a situation where that's okay? And what do you do as the parent if your child does say like, "Hey, I do love myself. I don't really like the way I look." I mean, whether it's a 12-year-old, a 25-year-old, I mean, obviously that changes too because if it's a 6-year-old, it's different. So I'm sure it depends on the age, obviously. But in general, what if a child does say that? What if a child is saying that? Is there a healthy way to deal with that or no?
Well, at the end of the day, like I think that we want to feel good in our bodies,
Mm-hmm.
right? We want to feel good in our bodies. And that's like a loaded question, right? How do we feel in our bodies? It's like I would ask why. Like
Mm,
what do you feel like you will have or your life will be
mm,
if you lose weight?
right.
Right? And the answer to that will give you a lot of information.
I think that's great. I mean, Julie, I'm sure I always think about you saying, be curious, tell me more. And that seems like a great
Yeah.
place to start, Amy, is like, and then like you're saying, I guess what you're saying is then you can get a framework about why this is going on. And then maybe it does come from potentially an unhealthy place. And maybe you find out, oh, it's because all the kids are teasing them at school or, because I saw this dancer I follow on TikTok. I don't know. Do you have anything to add to that, Julie?
Well, just again, kind of from personal experience, and I'm lucky that my daughter doesn't mind my talking about her in this podcast. Because that fire got lit by the pediatrician, I mean, I was already, primed and ready to receive information that my child wasn't perfect and that I should do something about it. But, it got to a point where she said, she was saying on a regular basis to me, I'm fat, I'm fat,
Hmm.
I'm fat, I'm fat. And I kept saying, it sounds like you're feeling fat today. Um, and this was, you know, wrong, saying you're not fat, you're beautiful. And what I discovered kind of at the end of the day there, and when things really shifted for her and for me, was that I said that I realized I was denying her feelings. I was denying her reality,
Hmm.
and that wasn't good either. I mean, I didn't
Mm-hmm.
want her to think of herself as fat, or I didn't want her to objectify her body or look at it with disdain. So it came from a good place, but at the end of the day, we have to validate how our kids feel.
Yeah, I mean, it's
So I
almost like
remember, yeah,
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but it feels like,
that's okay.
is the idea that, she's saying, I'm fat, I don't feel good. And you're going, not you specifically, but the parent is going, love yourself. You're beautiful as you are. And that's true. But I mean, if the child is like, I don't feel that way. I'm sad. I'm unhappy. I'm not comfortable.
Yeah.
I guess
Well,
then the
that
question to
was
you,
me, Greg.
and then
That
what
was
do you,
me.
I would ask both of
I
you
was.
then, I guess, and that's kind of my question then. If you're in that situation, that's tough. Like, what do you do? Like, Julie, what did you eventually do? And what can you do in a healthy way where it's not about like, this is how you lose weight or now we restrict eating, Amy and Julie, like, what do you do as opposed to just saying, I know you're upset and unhappy with yourself, but love yourself and all bodies are equal and it's okay. If what do you do?
Yeah, well, I'll answer, and Amy, you can tell me if I was right or wrong. um, what I ultimately did is I said, I mean, this had been going on for quite some time, and I finally had the awakening that I was denying her reality, and so what I said to her was, it sounds like what you're saying is that you feel different and your body feels different to you than your peers, than what your peers' bodies look like. And she burst into tears and said, that's exactly right. And I said, look, I think you look beautiful. I think you're healthy. She was already a runner, so an athlete. And I said, and if you want somebody to talk to you about it, I can find somebody. And what I did was I found somebody who still does this work and is quite amazing. She's a very whole body minded counselor. And so her goal wasn't to help Emily lose weight,
Mm,
even though that ultimately happened. Her goal was to create mindful eating
mm,
so that Emily thought about, well, what does she really want to eat and what does she not want to eat, and is she really hungry, and all of that kind of mindfulness that I had completely destroyed unintentionally,
mm.
in the fracas that occurred after the pediatrician told me, and I started running that race pretty quickly, and it was bad. So I don't know if that was right or wrong, Amy, but I do know that it led to my daughter, at, has an incredible body image. I mean, she feels so good about her body and loves the way it functions. She's an athlete. She runs marathons for the fun of it, which
Hmm.
I've never understood. Not the marathon part, but she doesn't run them to lose weight. She runs them because it makes her feel healthy.
Hmm.
So I don't know, Amy, what is your thought about all of that?
No, I think that's exactly right. I think that, right, when I talk about embodiment and feeling good in your body, it has to do with eating intuitively, eating mindfully,
Hmm.
checking in with yourself, right? Because if you're in tune with your body, you're not going to overeat. Maybe sometimes if you're like at a party or with people or, traveling where, things are just so delicious, but not on balance. You're not going to overeat and you're not going to undereat. You're not going to overexercise, you're not going to underexercise. You're going to just follow the cues from your body, which are always in the direction of health
Hmm.
and equilibrium.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
so that's, if we talk about prevention, that's what we want to foster. If we talk about recovery, that's the direction that we want to go in.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would say, if you're looking for a nutritionist for your child, like you have to find somebody who's eating disorder informed, because otherwise you're going to find somebody who in some way is, aligned with diet culture or weight loss or.
Mm-hmm.
Can I just ask, when you say find a nutritionist that is eating disorder informed, does that mean they're a therapist as well, or do you find a therapist? Because to me, this is connected to eating disorders, and also what Julie brought up a little bit about her daughter is that your literal eating is often combined with an emotional, psychological state. So, I mean, this is kind of basic, but eating disorders can be tied to all sorts of trauma that if you work through with a therapist, that eating disorder could potentially fall away. So, if you have a parent go see a nutritionist, if say the child is obese in an unhealthy way, is that nutritionist offering psychological help as well, or should the parent find a therapist as well? What do you mean when you say a nutritionist that is specializes in eating disorder?
I would say when you're working with eating disorders, then the best approach is to have a team, because nutritionists, their body of knowledge, their license, all of that is around feeding, eating. It's more, nutrition. Therapists deal with emotions. And I agree that eating disorders are a way to quell feelings. They're a way to cope. They're a way to cope with a difficult life. And so there's a lot of emotional work that goes with unwinding food issues. And then there can be a medical piece as well. And therapists who are eating disorder informed often know doctors who are eating disorder informed and nutritionists who are eating disorder informed. It's a whole specialty.
I mean, because it's so delicate, as opposed to someone who just wants to learn about eating more healthy would go to a nutritionist. But they have a deeper understanding of a relationship to, say, someone who's like bulimic or anorexic. Is that what you mean?
Well, there's emotional and medical and eating complications, like nuances with every form of an eating disorder.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, as you experienced, Julie, the medical community cause a lot of harm when it comes to people in their bodies, and are very insensitive to weight struggles, and can be blind to it. And so I always say the best bet is to find a therapist who's eating disorder informed, and they can help assess the situation, bring in medical professionals, nutrition as needed.
Right.
Not everybody needs a whole team.
Right. You sort of assess the situation as it comes.
Right.
I think too that there are some kind of, not. I'm certainly sensitive to the fact that not everybody can afford to bring
Right.
in a therapist or a team of people to help when this kind of thing. I do think there are some kind of common do's and don'ts, common sense do's and don'ts that parents can follow. One of the do's and don'ts that I often talk to parents about is the idea that if you've got what we call a picky eater, a child who's, particular about the kinds of food that they eat, parents, regardless of weight, parents will often chase that child with food. Here, eat this, here, eat this, here, eat this. And they push it on the kid. And that creates a more intense a re-intensification of the response that they're already getting, which is that I don't want that. I don't want that. So chasing a picky eater is always a don't. And the other end of the spectrum is if you've got a hearty eater, and hearty eaters parents tend to withdraw food from and restrict food from. And of course that makes the child feel deprived, and then they go after the food. So I'm often in the position of telling parents that what we need to do is trust our kids. And I learned all of this through every mistake I made. Trust our kids that they will listen to their bodies and encourage them to listen to their bodies. And I think we do that when we have a division of responsibility in the family with regard to food. So as parents, it's our responsibility to make the food, get it on the table at an appropriate time, and make sure that there's at least one thing your kid will eat on the table, and to present it attractively, because food is a multisensory experience. It's something we experience with all 5 of our senses. So that's our responsibility, and put it on in a timely fashion when your kids are going to be hungry. But it's our children's responsibility really to decide what they eat or even if they want to eat. And that they, if they're not hungry right then, they can always, pull something out of the fridge later, or you can pull something out of the fridge. And I don't, people are like, well, I don't want to be a short order cook. And that's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just saying that pushing food on kids creates picky eaters, and withdrawing food from kids often creates hearty eaters. Those, that kind of division: kids who eat too little or kids who eat too much. So I don't know what you think about that, Amy, but that's kind of.
I think that's right. I think that's right. And I'll add to what happens in being mindful about what happens around meals. Like, what's the tone of the meal?
Yeah.
We want to create an environment where we're like breaking bread together. Eating can be sort of like a communal experience. Is it a time where we unpack the stressors of our day, or we confront our children, right?
Yeah.
So that really matters also. Like, what
Yeah.
are we eating together? Is it light? Is it fun? Is it something that your kid is going to grow up having fond memories of? Is it a time of conflict?
Yeah, for sure.
If we stay on these do's and don'ts, which I think are great, Amy, can you talk? And maybe this is obvious, but it's not. I get why it's obviously not great, but could you maybe either of you could talk a little deeper about this idea that you don't put your child on a diet? Like, even if the kid is saying, like, I want to lose weight, why don't you put why don't you put your child on a diet, Amy?
Well, first of all, diet, like time and time and time again, diets have empirically been proven to not work.
Right.
Like, it's like
In the temporary, but they never are sustainable.
Never. They
Never.
actually cause problems. And I mean, if you think about it physiologically, when you lose weight quickly, it changes your hormones, it changes your metabolism. Like, your body, like, literally becomes hungry, right? So you're actually like messing with yourself. You're like, the equilibrium of your body is off, and
Because of the restriction.
because of the restriction. You're depriving yourself of things that your body needs. And I would say the emotional piece is that it's ultimately very self-rejecting. And so,
What is that? What do you mean when you say that? It's very self-rejecting.
there's this attitude of like I am bad, I need to change it into something that's good or more appropriate, right? And so, there's often little compassion when it comes to dieting, right?
Yeah, you're hard on yourself. It's punishment
It's
in a
punishment. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, right, and then you do that to a kid. You can imagine the messages that you're sending, and or supporting if it's initiated by them. But diets are by nature, it's deprivation.
And what if you and Julie, I really want to hear what you have to say about that, but I want to ask, like, let's say you have a teenager that's 15 or 16, so they have some independence, and you see that they are restricting, that they are dieting. If you're a parent in that situation and you're concerned, what do you do?
I mean, you really have to look at your kid. I mean, the whys are always very important. Like, why are you doing
The
this?
curiosity.
The curiosity. I mean, and in truth, I think people can understand that, like, eating too much numbs you. Like, eating too much numbs feelings. It sedates us. We get sleepy. Undereating can do the same thing, right? When teenagers undereat, their hormones are suppressed. They don't feel as much. It's like this turning your body off, and so it sort of has the same effect, and it can feel really good.
Right. No,
it's like you're less emotional, you're less volatile, you get all this positive feedback from the world.
Right.
It feels great. You can, like, fit into all of these clothes.
Right.
Yeah.
So it feels really great, but you're doing damage. And it's not sustainable, and it's not really right. It's like, it's not living like a whole healthy life. And so I think that rather than putting kids on diets, you want to move the whole family to eating in a way that's healthier on balance, right? And not singling out one kid.
Right.
Like, oh, this is all of the food, but, like, Johnny can only eat these things and everyone else can
Yeah.
eat these things. Or like we're all eating in a certain way and then like dad comes home with a cheeseburger, but like you're not allowed to have that. Only dad's allowed to have that.
Right.
Right.
Well, and it's tricky. I mean, we have 3 kids, and they all eat totally differently.
Totally different. Yeah.
And so I guess you would say,
Which
and
is
then
good, right? I mean, I think that
it's
it
well,
shouldn't
I
be
think what
expected that everyone eats the same.
no, but I think your point is you have to stay open to that too. So
Right.
it's not like this is the way we eat. I don't know, Julie, can you speak a little bit about diets and anything that you thought of while Amy was talking about that stuff, the healthy eating habits you put in place of that, and why you don't put your kid on a diet?
Well, one of the things that when I was kind of, yeah, I completely agree with Amy. Don't ever put your child on a diet. Don't ever put yourself on a diet. Diets don't
Right.
work. Diets are bad. You can change your diet, right? But you shouldn't diet, if that makes sense. You can, it's okay to like eat more vegetables and, put that, if that's not something that you've routinely done, but that's not dieting. Dieting is really restrictive. Restricting calories, restricting fat, all of which, everything, calories are needed for energy. Fat is needed for brain development. So anyway, yeah, I agree with Amy 100% on never dieting or putting your kid on a diet. One of the things that when I was researching this heavily, because I realized I was making every mistake you could possibly make in the book when I was raising my daughter, I read some of Ellen Satter's work, and one of the things that she said, and she's a psychotherapist and a nutritionist, and one of the things that she said was, and this kind of harkens back to what Amy was saying a little bit before about like what happens at mealtime. And Ellen Satter's recommendation, and I think it's quite brilliant, is that you serve all the food on platters at the dinner table. Everybody sits down, you pass the food around. You can take some if you want it. You don't have to take it if you don't want it. You can take as much as you want so that the food doesn't have that weighted quality that Amy was talking about. Oh, dad gets a hamburger. No, if hamburgers are being served, hamburgers are being served. And it's set on a platter, and anybody who wants a hamburger can have a hamburger. And it equalizes, I think, food in some way. Another component of that I think is another, do's and don'ts. I don't believe in setting dessert aside as the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. If you're going to serve dessert, whether it's ice cream or whatever, put it out with the rest of the food, because otherwise they have to get through certain foods, which we call
Mm.
healthy foods, right? They have to get through, it's a chore then to get through the healthy food so that they can get to the food they like, which is actually the less nutritious food. So I think normalizing eating as a family, normalizing the variety of foods that you have to choose from, and creating an equality. All foods are food. I mean, yes, arguably, ice cream isn't probably as nutritionally valuable to you as broccoli. But if we label it as this kind of reward that you only get for eating the stuff that your parents are labeling as healthy, then of course all they're going to want is the reward. It's going to cause them to crave that reward.
Amy, can you speak to any of that and what parents can keep in mind in terms of creating what environment you're creating at, say, the mealtime? I mean, you've already touched on, which I think is great, is that emotional component of, what's going on at mealtime. But are there things that you offer up to parents sometimes in terms of what you might do at mealtime?
Well, I completely agree with everything that Julie just said. I think that it's very, it's good to sort of like equalize foods and to not, and again, it's like helping your kids tune in. You eat a Snickers bar, how does it make you feel?
Mm-hmm.
You
Mm.
eat Too much ice cream, how does it make you feel? And helping kids understand that. I think I talked to Julie about this, but my daughter, who's 7, I started putting, she has ice cream. Like, she loves ice cream. So rather than having it at the,
good for her.
rather than having it at the end of the meal, like I found that she was racing through dinner.
Oh, wow.
To get to the ice cream. And so we
Wow.
started putting it on the table. And it's the first thing she eats, but then she eats more and more in a more balanced way, having the ice cream out of the way because she's
Wow.
not racing to it.
Right.
It's like then she can sort of settle in to the meal,
Yeah.
it's so counterintuitive to what
Well,
we're taught.
that's totally counterintuitive, but I like this idea of like you do have to think out of the box a little bit. And it seems like if you're in tune, what you're noticing is like that's actually a benefit to her because right now she's not even digesting the food because she's racing to get to the ice cream, right?
Yeah.
Isn't
Yeah,
that
and
isn't that the bigger idea that you have to stay open and intuitive to what's going on with each individual kid?
Yeah, I think that's right.
Right. Yeah. And another aspect of racing through your food to get to the reward is that you're not giving your body enough time to decide if it's still hungry or not.
Exactly.
Because you're just piling it in. And by the time you feel full, you're overly full. I think it's a phenomenon that a lot of people experience at Thanksgiving. A lot of people, not just kids, but it all looks so good. We put a lot on the plate. We eat quickly because we're hungry, because we kind of didn't eat too much earlier because we were anticipating this big meal. And then by the end, we're all feeling bloated and sluggish and gross because we haven't been mindful in the process of moving through that plate of food.
Hi, it's Greg. Please make sure you join us for our next episode, where we'll have part 2 of our conversation with Amy Bernstein, as we continue discussing the challenges that arise when dealing with the issues around our kids and food.
Thanks for listening to the Parenting Horizons podcast.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please share with your family and friends. And if you'd like to hear more about Julie's work, join one of her parenting groups, or see about individual counseling, please visit parentinghorizons.com. Or you can email Julie at julie.ross@parentinghorizons.com.
See you next time.